Hey, everybody. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jesse.
You're watching Disruptive Investing. And you are the grid.
What?
Remember? We are the world.
Oh,
you are
okay.
the grid.
You are the grid.
We've been reporting on renewable energy and electric transportation for almost a decade now. And we've said this before. You know it's true. When you do something for a long time, you usually begin to get pretty good at it.
But here's the thing. If you're not careful, you get good at doing that thing one way, and you get bigger and bigger blinders to new ways of doing it.
Example, I used to be in the construction industry. I started as a kid working on job sites, watching and learning and helping subcontractors do their jobs. I carried a lot of shit. I picked up all kinds of skills, though, doing this, and then I applied them to when I went out and worked for myself and had my own construction business. So when I first started learning, nail guns were not a thing yet. So I learned how to frame a house or an addition by hand with a hammer and nails. Then, as nail guns became more popular, I started using them because they were a huge time saver. You had to use them, or you were at a serious disadvantage to your competition. But it took time. You drive past some job sites in the late 80s and early 90s, and the old timers were still there hand nailing the houses.
New technologies have an adoption curve. We talk about it all the time. If the new technology is disruptive, like nail guns, then the adoption rate follows an S-curve. A bit slow to start, as few people have heard of nail guns, and nail guns are expensive, and there are very few places to get nails for them or repair shops for them, etc.
And then as more and more people buy them, more manufacturers start making them, the price drops, and the adoption becomes exponential.
Until one day, it seems every carpenter is using nail guns and the market is saturated.
And that new disruptive technology changed the building industry. Nail guns made it easier and faster to train new framing crews, it made it cheaper and faster to build homes and buildings, and so it actually made the end product, the buildings, cheaper.
Now let's switch our focus to energy. There are about 1,700 electric utilities in the U.S. Almost all of them provide energy to the grid by doing what they've been doing since the electrical grid started back in 1882.
By the way, that was the Pearl Street Station in Lower Manhattan. It was started by Thomas Edison. It had 85 customers.
These 1,700 companies build, maintain, and operate power plants.
Whether their power plants make electricity by burning coal, oil, natural gas, or by building hydroelectric dams, giant wind generators, or gigantic solar farms, they almost all build a centralized power generator and then distribute that power, usually hundreds of miles, to the end users, you and me. Electric utilities are like old school carpenters. That's how they've been doing it for years. So that's how they think they still should get it done.
And they really have no reason to change. Or so they think, because these utilities are regulated by the government. Government regulators decide what they can charge you, the consumer. You really haven't had a choice on how you get your electricity for your home or business.
These government regulators are now telling the power utilities to spend money on building more power onto the grid, right? We need more power for electric cars, for instance, to the tune of about $2 trillion over the next 10 years to keep up with demand.
And you might be like, well, that's great. The utilities have to build more power plants and solar farms and power lines, and I'll get a better grid for free.
Think again. The government mandates what the utilities do if they want to keep their monopoly business, but the utilities will just be passing that charge on to us, the ratepayers, for this $2 trillion in capital upgrades to the grid.
And they won't just be charging us what it costs them. No. They are in this business to make money. So guess what? We'll be paying higher electricity bills to cover the $2 trillion plus their profit on top.
And we have no say in this. Well, that is until now. You see, the power utilities would rather we don't know about this, but there is this little thing called the sun. And I don't know if you knew about this, but it comes out every day here on Earth. Now, sometimes it's cloudy, but most places on Earth get at least 10 hours of sunlight a day. And so far, the sun hasn't failed to come out.
More and more people are learning that pretty simply you can grab that solar power and convert it into electricity using these solar panels and store the energy in home batteries like Tesla's Powerwalls or Anker Solix's X1 battery systems, and then use the power for your own uses for free, or send some of that power back onto the grid for your neighbors to use and get paid for it.
You can see why the utilities don't want us to know about this, because that means that we don't need them so much anymore. Each kilowatt hour of electricity that we don't pay to them means they have to find someone else to pay them for this $2 trillion in new power plants.
Okay, so why are we talking about this on Disruptive Investing?
Well, because the electrical grid, this 142-year-old industry, is about to get seriously disrupted. And you, my fellow disruptive investors, might want to know about that, right?
Zach and I have had years to wrap our heads around how this new way of generating power works because we've been living it. We put solar panels on our roof over 10 years ago. We've had home batteries for years, and we've been part of a virtual power plant, or a VPP, for years as well.
We and 1,000 other homes in our state of Massachusetts with batteries and solar are virtually connected. That's the V in VPP. In our case, Tesla and our utility grid can control our batteries for short periods of time when the need arises, usually about 10 times in the summer and about 10 times in the winter.
Let's say that there's a really hot day in July, and lots of people in Massachusetts start turning on their air conditioners to cool their homes.
Yeah, so the power grid sees this spike in use coming on, and they have to decide whether to fire up a gas-burning peaker plant to meet the demand or grab power from over 1,000 Tesla Powerwall batteries.
They look at the two costs to use power. It's divided into 15-minute increments, and if Tesla's price is cheaper, then they pay Tesla to use our batteries for 15 minutes.
And I don't care because I don't see any difference. But for that 15 minutes, we get paid for the use of our power.
And usually what we get paid is quite a lot per kilowatt hour because it's so expensive for a utility to fire up a peaker plant. And it takes a while to get a gas peaker plant up and running at full output, whereas it only takes milliseconds to grab power from a battery. So again, we filled up the battery with free solar energy and we sold it to the grid, our neighbors, for a high kilowatt hour rate. That is, by definition, being your own utility.
Now, we are simplifying it and leaving out the part that should interest you, disruptive investors. Tesla developed the AI software called AutoBidder that runs behind the scenes and is doing two things. Number one, AutoBidder is monitoring all these homes like ours that have batteries and solar. It has all this data. How much energy do each of us 1,000 homes have stored? How much solar energy are we each generating? And I should mention that we don't necessarily need to have solar panels to be part of a VPP, just the batteries.
Number two, AutoBidder is looking at the whole electrical grid and seeing what the demand is and what the available prices are for supplying that demand. AutoBidder then decides how to supply that energy demand as cheaply as possible.
And these VPPs are operating as we speak in many markets around the globe. Tesla is operating VPPs in Puerto Rico, Texas, California, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Japan, the UK, and Australia as we speak.
And this is why we think of Tesla as more than just a car company. Tesla gets it. They know that this is where energy is headed. The monolithic power utility companies are spending way more money to make power the old-fashioned way, with giant power plants which require tons of capital and hundreds of miles of high-voltage power lines.
VPPs don't require new power lines because we already have the power lines. Yes, we have to install some solar and batteries, but our systems are cheaper per kilowatt hour generated to build than theirs are.
Why do you think that almost 6 million American homes have solar installed? Because those 6 million Americans sat down and did the math, and they realized that the sun was going to keep coming out every day and give them free solar energy.
Can you imagine when everyone sits down and does the math? What if 130 million homes in America, that's all the homes in America, go solar?
Well, that would be horrible. The grid would explode and the world would catch on fire, and we'd all go back to the Stone Age.
You know why they say that? Because they're afraid. They are so afraid that if we continue this trend of installing solar and batteries, they will be out of business.
Now, this isn't some green environmental plea that we're making. Yes, the planet would benefit. Burning less fossil fuels to make our electricity would be great. Just from an air pollution perspective alone, it would be great. But from a disruptive investor perspective, VPPs are inevitable.
You are not going to hear about this from too many other places. In fact, many think we're crazy and that this will never happen. Some thought that this would never happen when we first started talking about it years ago, except now it is happening and on larger and larger scales.
And I know, many investors have been trained like Pavlovian dogs to get fed a stock ticker symbol right about now.
But we're not financial advisors. Do your own research. Investing is risky, and we don't know your financial situation. But does Tesla run VPPs? Yes. But there are also many others in this arena. Coming up soon on Disruptive Investing, we're going to be bringing you an interview with the CEO and co-founder of Yada Energy, which is a company also in this space.
And if you're really serious about being a disruptive investor, I urge you to check out our Patreon Investor Club over on our Now You Know Patreon page.
We have a ton of perks there, including our weekly Investor Club bonus stories, our live streams with CEOs and founders of disruptive companies, and our Investor Club Slack, which is exclusively for our members.
That is a treasure trove of information where only the cool kids can hang out and ask questions and share ideas about all the disruptive investing topics. We hope you'll join us and check it out.
Think about it. Even if you get into one big investing opportunity that you wouldn't have otherwise known about, it could be the best investing decision you ever make.
Thanks for watching and subscribing and liking.
We'll see you next week on Disruptive Investing.